Sing to me, O Muse. In the world of the Thorn Castle she had scurried. In the real world of the forest cottage she had run races with rabbits. Neither could compare to how fast she had run twice on the same day now, throwing out her legs and leaning forwards, desperately gulping air. Philip was close on her heels, still wrestling with the thing on his head. "To the left," he panted. "The path splits and there's a small holding up ahead. At least in the real world." She made the mistake of turning to look behind her. The things were slithering after them just above the ground, spilling down the path like something boiling and spoiled that had been overturned. The forest grew thinner. Though it was now well into twilight, with fewer trees blocking the last rays of sunset, the land was still bright golden. The path widened onto something like a dirt road, and its unruly banks changed over into orchards and rows of vegetables. The creatures behind them thinned out too. It was like the smaller ones couldn't leave the shadows. Those that remained were looking more tentative now, curling around the bushes and scrub like smoke, skittering to the occasional protective lee of a rock, from which they would dart out and try and nip the fleeing prince and princess's heels. But the larger demons, the stronger ones, still tore after their quarry, hissing and snorting and untroubled by the dying sunlight. The closest one was the size of a horse and had horns above its evil yellow eyes, and it was gaining on them. "The gate!" Philip cried, pointing at a rough stile that marked the entrance to the small holding. It was certainly not strong enough to keep the demons out, and looked rather pathetic. On the fence next to it were tacked strange things Aurora's couldn't understand. Garlic, a rope of wolfsbane, a tattered cloth painted with runes. But the prince seemed to think the gate offered some form of safety, so she let him pick her up and hurl her over the side. He dived after her, landing in a roll. The giant demon chasing them stopped short of the gate. It looked ridiculous, this large, black, yellow-eyed, smoky, horned, evil thing, swaying hesitantly in front of the comparatively small rustic fence with the bits and tatters on it. It slowly lowered its head and began to fade. In moments it was gone. Philip let out a string of curses. The demon clinging to his head was still there, undispelled. He reached up and pulled it off, hurling it to the ground. It howled, its face splitting almost in half. The teeth that it had sunken into the prince's flesh weren't long, but there were lots of them. The prince yanked his sword out of its sheath and dove it into the thing's head through its wide mouth. Perhaps more times than strictly necessary. It shrieked and hissed and squirmed and bled white blood-like pus, finally disappearing in a curl of oily smoke. Rose watched it all silently, trying to regain her breath. She wasn't sure why she wasn't crying. "Dear God," Philip swore, running her hand through his hair and looking at the thick smears of blood that covered it. "I think I would have preferred a dragon. Those things were horrible." He wiped his sword on the ground to clean it. Why did that tiny gate stop them?" she asked. "Protective wards. Didn't you see them hanging there?" he said, pointing at the brightly coloured bits and herbs. "It's a pretty common thing in the more rural villages. Never believed they actually worked, though." Oh. She decided she would deal with the philosophical implications, dream talismans effective with keeping away dream demons, another time. A lone woodsman, returning from the forest, axe over one shoulder, looked over at the couple. Maybe it was the blood all over Philip, or the princess's extremely out-of-place dress, for he started walking faster, away from them. "Let's go and see if anyone has some warm water. And bandages. Maybe dinner?" Philip suggested. She put her hand to her head. "But none of this is real. We're not really wounded or hungry, right?" "It's real enough while we're here," he said with a shrug. "I don't know what happens to us in the real world if we're killed here. I don't think I want to find out. So let's play by the rules until we figure out the loopholes." She nodded. That made sense. They started towards the village. "So, another trap. Much cleverer this time," Philip said. "Yes. This time with a fancy surprise ending," Aurora sighed. "But you figured it out and managed to pull us out of it." "I suppose I did," she said, thinking about it. It was all her doing, up to the part with the demons. "Suppose? You completely did it. It was amazing. Well done." He was truly excited for her. His praise was real and enthusiastic. Little warm waves worked up her body from the tips of her toes to her cheeks. He, her prince, was genuinely impressed by something she did. It almost eliminated the remaining apprehensiveness in her. But not quite. What's wrong? We won, Rose." Why are you so upset?" She took a deep breath and tried to sort out her feelings. "When you told the story of what happened in the real world before, you mentioned the fairies giving me gifts of beauty and grace or whatever, and I just sort of dismissed it. I thought it was poetic license. So when the back there fairies, the demons, one of them said my beauty was a gift, a fairy gift, it suddenly sank in. It must have been literal. My beauty isn't even my own. It was given to me by someone else." "Oh, Rose, don't be silly. Of course. The story said. The fairy said. But that's not the point. The point is that I realized, standing in front of the mirror, that wherever they came from, my looks were never actually that important to me in the real world. Other things were. That's when I figured out how weird the situation with those fairies or demons or whatever was. I didn't even start out caring about my looks in this world, the world of the Thorn Castle. Not until I was actively encouraged. The fairies were acting exactly how my handmaiden acted around me, the dressing up and praising my golden hair, and she turned out to be a spy from Maleficent." Philip frowned. "How strange. It seems like twice now in your dream life she has tried to distract you and trap you with dresses and, I don't know, your beauty and vanity, which you don't really have much of. Vanity, I mean. You're certainly beautiful. It seems like Maleficent doesn't have a very large range of scenarios for you. She just goes back to the same old thing." "I think she might underestimate me. I think she has a picture in her head of who I am. Silly, pretty princess. I don't think she actually knows who I am." "I hope I do," Philip said with a grin, taking her hand and squeezing it. "Do you?" she asked with a wry smile. "I'm not even sure I know myself." The breeze turned, bringing the clear, teasing trill of a fiddle to them, along with the smell of smoke and the sound of laughter. There couldn't have been a more inviting combination of sensations in the world. "That must be the village up ahead," Philip said, pointing. The two picked up their pace and hurried to the centre of the tiny village. It was really nothing more than a cosy collection of cottages, with thatched roofs and smoke drifting from their stone chimneys. There was no bank or church, or any more formal building than a smithy and a storehouse. Rose realized with a start that it might have even been one of the places her aunts, the fairies, went to get supplies. She was never allowed to go on those trips. A huge red and orange bonfire crackled merrily on the common. Two fiddlers and a jug player enthusiastically belted out high-spirited music. Children ran around in bare feet, mouths smeared with red and purple from the berries they were gobbling down. Adults clapped and danced. Everyone was dressed, well, if not in their best, then at least in their nicer clothes. Big skirted dresses for twirling, broken straw hats freshened up with ribbon, even the occasional washed face. Humans weren't the only ones enjoying the fun either. Dogs and cats chased each other through the crowd. A grey donkey lifted its neck and brayed along with the music. Toddlers worked to keep a small flock of overexcited geese out from underfoot. A table with a snow-white cloth was laid out with all sorts of pies and tarts, along with a pile of bread and pots of dark purple jam. A cauldron of something that smelled like hot wine sat on a smaller fire nearby. A solicitous crone ladled out steaming portions into anyone's mug. Aurora's widened in delight at the scene. "It's the Berry Moon Festival," Philip explained. "If things work the same way here, they're celebrating the end of summer. I bet that's hot raspberry mash over there." "I know that festival. They have it every year, but my aunts never let me go," she said wistfully. "Wait," Philip sighed and put his hands out to catch her as she began to sway, hit by another stream of memories. This time it wasn't too bad or too long. A series of very familiar scenes presented themselves one after another. Late summer, and despite the seclusion in the woods, the excitement of the festival reaching even the three aunts and Rose. She begged to go. If the breeze turned right, she could smell simmering raspberries on the wind. "Never. It's not safe," said Flora. "I'm sorry, dear," said Fauna. "Maybe when you're a little older." "How fun can it be anyway?" Merryweather asked. "All those clodhoppers dancing around to their silly songs and eating pies." "You never let me do anything!" Rose screamed, storming out of the house. Age 13, 14, 15. Rose came to, still upright this time, head pounding but buoyed by one clear thought. "I get to go this time," she said, grinning and walking ahead eagerly. "Rose, it's not real," Philip said, chasing after. "It's probably another trap. It's probably danger." "Don't even." She spun around and put her finger to his lips. It's my dream, and I'm finally going to enjoy it. But if the prince was expecting another trap from Maleficent, his suspicions were immediately allayed by what happened next. The music wound down awkwardly, the dancing stopped, and the crowd turned unfriendly stares on the couple. The princess put her hands to the back of her head in embarrassment. They did look pretty strange, an armed prince and a ragged princess covered in blood and dirt. Hi, she said with a timid wave. She tried to remember who she was and where she was from, and how people usually looked at her when she walked into a room, at least in the Thorn Castle. Excuse us for interrupting. Where have ye come from, just at sunset and all? An old man asked, not bothering to mask the suspicion in his voice. Oh, come off it, you crazy old coot, swore a woman not dramatically younger than he, rolling her eyes. That impotent gypsy Oswey came in just a little before them. You didn't give him the 3rd degree. We know who Oswey is, the old man sniffed. Never seen the likes of these two before. There were murmurs and nods of agreement from more than a few villagers. We escaped from the enchanted castle, Aurora Rose explained calmly. We were prisoners there and managed to escape the evil queen and her servants. We were chased by demons, all the way here, Philip added. I killed the last one, who did this to me. He turned and showed the back of his head, torn and bloody. And at that the crowd began to relax. I thought you looked royal, a woman said, nodding her head knowingly. That's why we have the wards, piped up an ancient lady who had few teeth and many warts and a long pointed chin. Keeps the witch and her hellfire servants out of the town. For which we are indebted to you. Utterly, Philip said, with a grateful bow. Are there lots of other people in there? Another woman asked, looking worried. Trapped? Yes. We plan to get help, to rescue them. There was no point in telling the whole story to these dream people who may have been asleep in the real world. Or not in the real world at all. I'll need an army, a middle-aged farmer with a quilted jerkin said. A long piece of grass stuck out of his mouth. Aye, a big army, with siege machines and the like, said another thoughtfully. You better not have your army tromping through my swede patch, the third farmer said, pointing down to the ground with his finger like a judge. I'll not have your army marching through here and ruining my swedes. There's not... All right, we promise, Philip said, giving up. No armies on anyone's swede patch. The farmer settled down, relieved. Well then, come and refresh yourselves, you young heroes, the crone at the cauldron cackled. You're interrupting our party, you might as well join it. We would be delighted, the princess said with a sigh. The music started up again. Everyone began to clap, dance or gossip, not bothering to disguise the curious stares they gave the newcomers. Someone handed them each a heavy-bottomed mug of hot raspberry wine. One sip of the sweet and syrupy drink went immediately to Aurora Rose's toes. Her foot began to tap to the music. She watched the children form a circle and began a surprisingly complicated routine. Come, a little girl said, running up to her and grabbing her hand. She looked at the princess with hope and awe. It was unlikely anyone as pretty or dressed up as she had been to their village, ever. The princess in turn looked at Philip. It's another trap, he said. Probably. Doesn't feel like it, she said with a grin, and she let herself be dragged away by the little girl. Neither did the last two, Philip called out after her. The crowd cheered, and the adults joined together to make a larger ring around the children, dancing in the opposite direction. It was the exact opposite of the balls that Maleficent threw. No fancy dresses, no preening, no dissembling, no posing. The children were dancing for the sake of the dance itself. Energy, happiness, and light flew around, and Aurora Rose found herself swept up by it, until she was laughing along with the little ones whose hands she held. Philip, on the other side, looked uneasy. He kept smiling and toasting villagers, but obviously didn't like the way he was now separated from her by the ring of adult dancers. The music slowed down. The circles paused in their gyres. Philip moved forward and began to clap, relieved it was all over. And then the music started up again. The rings of dancers began their revolutions again. Wait now, Philip said to no one in particular. No one heard, and the fiddlers played on. Like a coach gradually accelerating on a downhill stretch, the strings plucked and thumped slowly at first, and then began to build speed. The dancers followed suit, no longer attempting intricate steps, but just circling round and round. Rose! Philip called, but she was swept up in the dance, her hair a golden smear, her smile a flicker that was there and then gone. Soon he could barely see the inner circle at all. The musicians played faster, their bows snapped back and forth across their fiddles, like they were trying to saw them in half. The dancers spun in circles so swift it became two blurry bangles of cloth and braids and feet and dust. The adults put their joined hands together in the air and rushed into the centre towards the children and Rose. Philip put his hand on his sword. The music reached a fever pitch, the fiddlers pulling like the fingers would fall off. The notes sounded insane. Philip started to step forwards. And then the music stopped, just like that. Everyone on the sides clapped madly. Both rings of dancers swayed, separated and collapsed, all exhausted. They stumbled back to rest or have a drink. The fiddlers shook their hands out and started again, a slow folk medley to give everyone, including themselves, a chance to recover. Aurora Rose's cheeks were ruddy and her smile was wild. She laughed when she saw the slow changes on Philip's face. Suspicion, then confusion, then grudging delight. "I told you it didn't feel like a trap." "Neither did the last two," Philip repeated, rolling his eyes. He started to hand her drink back, but she took both it and his own mug and set them down on the barrel, then grabbed his hand and led him out to the dance floor. A reel was just beginning. A row of men and a row of women were curtsying and bowing to their partners across the way. The prince and princess tacked themselves onto the ends. If she had any doubts about the son of a king being able to perform a country dance, her fears quickly evaporated. Philip gave her a not-too-courtly bow and immediately began the correct steps in perfect synchronicity with the boys and men around him. She picked up her skirts and danced up to him as all the ladies danced up too, but did not touch their partners. All they could do was look into each other's eyes, daring the other one to look away. The prince and princess's faces were less than a blush apart as she switched her feet in a series of tiny moves. She felt the heat from the drink spread back up through her body and flushed her lips and cheeks. Then she was spinning back to her own line again, dizzy and giddy. The lines moved and they switched partners and clapped above their heads. Soon Aurora Rose was face to face with a short-bearded woodsman who had a cloth cap and surprisingly graceful feet. He was gentlemanly and had a serious expression, devoted to the dance, but gave her a wink when it was time to move on. The music broke for a moment when a small child ran straight down the middle, crying and looking for his mother. The princess immediately took him by his little hand and walked him around until they found her. The mother, unconcerned, it was a small village with nowhere really to get lost, gave her thanks, but the boy kept staring back at the princess, awed by his royal rescue. Everyone laughed and the dance restarted, and Aurora Rose was back with Philip. When it was time for him to swing her around, he put his full hand on her waist, thumb curving around her back so he had her entirely. She could feel the heat from his palm through the rich cloth and found herself swaying so he was supporting more of her weight than he really needed to, as if she would fall if he let go. When he put his other hand on her waist to lift her up for the lady's jump, he whispered in her ear. She didn't understand what he said at first, too focused on his lips just touching her ear, his warm breath on her cheek. "Your dress." She looked down when her brain stopped whirling. She no longer wore the meringue-like light blue ridiculous thing. It was instead a strange mix of her outfit from when she had lived in the forest and what she'd escaped the Thorn Castle in. An old brownish skirt and black corset top, but with a golden shirt that flowed under the corset and over her hips like a tunic. The skirts were all ripped and in tatters, and her shoes were once again gone. She shrugged. "It's my dream, isn't it?" she said, whispering in his ear. Philip raised an eyebrow, thinking about this. And the moment was over. They were returning to their lines. After that dance ended, a circle dance began, which is a little disappointing. She wanted to be close to Philip again. But a dance was a dance, and she was having fun, so she joined in that one anyway. And the one after that, and the one after that. Philip bowed out after a couple, his constitution for such diversions not as hearty as hers. He toasted her from the sidelines and was polite, but not encouraging to local girls who flirted madly despite his persistence. Finally, he was forced to retreat to a quieter area where the horses were tied up, and carts and wagons were parked for the evening. The princess eventually took a break, collapsing next to Philip on a pile of hay, leaning her hot and exhausted body next to him. "Rose," Philip began. I know we need to go," she sighed, glugging down the last of his wine. "Well, I don't know." He cast a worried look at the sky. It was now fully dark, and the stars were out. The bonfire blazed bright orange and red against the sky, smoke hazing the heavens. "Maybe we should spend the night here. It seems safe. I worry about another direct attack from—" He stopped what he was saying when a funny-looking man approached them. He had been hidden inside the pretty covered wagons. Peeling paint decorated the sides and a landscape of mountains against the blue sky. One brightly covered pennant still flapped bravely. The man was certainly not a local. His dress was just a trifle too fine, and too untouched by the dirt of farmer woodman's life involved. His face was different too, with a pointier nose and light blue eyes. He wore a multicolored cap that he touched when he sat down across from them. "A fine night for a village dance," said he. "Aye," Philip said. "It is indeed. You don't seem like you're from this village, though." You don't neither, the man retorted, but toasted with his mug, a slightly dented metal one. People say you're from that castle over there, the one where the witch keeps everyone prisoner. Yes, the princess said. We escaped. We're going to go and get help. Where are you from? Philip pressed. All over, my lad, all over. I'm Oswald, the travelling merchant, the man said, getting up and giving a little bow. Peddler of delights and displayer of fantastic finds. People come from all over when they hear I'm in town to take a gander at my wondrous wares. Really? Philip said. He didn't quite say it in disbelief, but Aurora Rose gave him a small kick anyway. Oh, I can tell you're a sophisticated gentleman, Oswald said with a smile. You've a sword of steel and probably all sorts of boy toys at home. But I've been to the east and beyond, lad. I've been to Alexandria and Shanghai and Persia. I've traded with those who've been to Rullier and Carcosa. Tell me, have you ever seen anything such as this? Like a magician, he pulled out of nowhere a delicate wire birdcage, tiny and bell-shaped. But on the golden perch inside wasn't a real bird at all. It was a metal one, shiny and faceted like a gem. It had bright emeralds for eyes and a beak carved out of onyx. Amazing, Philip said in wonder, putting his head close to a better look. Oh, that's nothing. Get a listen to this. Oswald pressed the sword on the side of the cage, and suddenly the bird came alive. It cocked its head and flapped its wings, then it opened its beak, and it let out a pretty little trill just like a real bird. It's wonderful, the princess breathed. She can sing real songs too, Oswald said with a proud smile. Not like you and me, no, not the songs from around this great country, but songs nonetheless. Quite the companion on the long dusty roads. He sighed, setting it down on the hay bale in front of him so the prince and princess could continue to admire it. That was from one of my trips long ago to the east. Don't do that so much anymore. Mainly I come to these parts a couple of times a year on regular rounds, sell the good folks things they can't get here. Knives, pots, the usual housewares, pretty cloth in the city, and I pick up the things they can't get in the cities. Mushrooms, wild herbs, the usual. Thought I'd stay for the party, but I'll be on my way tomorrow. Really? Aurora Rose asked excitedly, finally drawing her eyes away from the bird and looking meaningfully at Philip. Maybe we can travel with you for safety. You can hide us in your wagon. Oswald looked away, down at his drink, then over their heads towards the woods. Not that you wouldn't make pleasant enough company, but I'm afraid I've no desire to get the attention of that evil fairy back in there. Philip frowned. You know she will find out who helped you, the man protested. Her spies are everywhere. I'm a coward, yeah, but I survived through more kingdomly squabbles and troubled times than many in my profession. We're not asking you to take us all the way through the woods, the prince said. Just part of the way. To the crossroads after the granite escarpment. We can part there. We can pay you, the princess added. And somehow, we'll think of something. As we start getting twitchy. If I was to take you, I couldn't take payment now, could I? He said, thinking desperately. Not for helping the two of you out on your noble quest. It will have to just be a good deed. Unless it gets me killed. In which case it will be a stupid, stupid deed. It's a good deed, the princess suggested. The man finally shook his head and stood up. Well, I'll leave it to the fates like I always do. That way I don't make my decision myself. I can give myself up to what the gods will. How's that? Philip demanded. Well, can you sing, pretty bird? The man asked, cocking his head at the princess. Yes, but so we'll have a singing contest, Oswald declared. You against my own pretty bird ear. You win, I'll take you wherever you want, as far as you want. Are you in? I'll take your man's pretty sword and hilt there. Philip put his hand protectively on his belt. We'll have no way to defend ourselves. If you think a sword will defend you from Maleficent, you're already lost, Oswald observed wryly. Philip shuffled his legs in exasperation but didn't contradict him. I'll wind her up once. Whoever sings longest without repeating a song wins. Is it a deal? Philip looked at Aurora Rose. The princess tried very hard not to roll her eyes, a habit she had picked up from the otherwise expressionless Liana. The contest was a cinch. Singing was her thing. Folk songs, religious songs, foreign songs, whatever the fairies taught her, whatever her music taught or the minstrel did. Even her own made-up songs to while away the hours in the woods or her concerts in the castle. In fact, this was very much like one of her performances, just with higher stakes. Absolutely, she said. I'll even make the little wonder go first, Oswald said, inserting a silver key into the thing's neck and winding. Sort of gives you a head start. The bird tipped back and forth once or twice on its perch, almost like a real one, but its movements were jerky and sudden, and its eyes didn't move, nor did it cock its head suspiciously at its audience, as a way a real bird might have. The carved gem beak opened, and it began to sing. The music that emerged was beautiful and perfect and unworldly, like tiny bits of metal or glass tinkling on a stone floor in surprising order. The notes were a little strange to the princess's ears, but she absorbed the new sounds eagerly to try them herself later. It was a happy little tune, just the sort of thing you would imagine a pretty wind-up toy would play. Nor too soon it was over. "Your turn, young miss," Ozzy said with a little bow. For now the princess wouldn't show off. She would just concentrate on winning. Without thinking she sang, Duce, Duce dam jolie. The last words from the minstrel before Maleficent's guards had hauled him away. In memory of him she sang the whole thing through, which he didn't have a chance to. She felt rather than saw Philip watching her enchanted. When she flipped, even Ozzy touched his hat again. "That was amazing, miss, if you don't mind me saying." "Rose, I've heard you sing before, but—" Philip was at a loss for words. "Your voice is so sweet, like an angel, or something perfect and pure." She blushed. "All right, Birdie's turn," Ozzy said. It sang again, another happy, sprightly tune. The princess sang again, a comic, but not too bawdy ballad to match its tone. The bird sang again. Its tunes grew more complicated. Sometimes it sang two notes at once to make a little chorus with itself. The princess wasn't concerned in the slightest. She had a repertoire of hundreds of ballads, canticles, and rounds to choose from. Slowly its songs began to change, from the simple country airs to tunes that were sweeter and sadder. It held its notes and trilled in minor keys. When it sang, the princess listened, enraptured. At the same time, she was impatient for it to end so she could begin her own response. It was almost like she didn't even care about the contest anymore. Finally, it sang a song so sad that even the wind-up bird's unnatural notes brought tears toward the listener's eyes. Rose gave it an equally sad, shaky rejoinder. The thing paused for a long moment, fluttering up its wings nervously. It had used up its library of music. Somewhat regretful the show was over, Philip turned to Oswy. "Well, seems like—" And then it began to improvise. Tentatively at first, it began to sing a sad little tune, as if it was truly distraught over almost losing the contest. But then little arias built on themselves, climbing higher and higher in dizzying complexity. The music turned joyful again as the wind-up toy sang its clockwork heart out. Without waiting for her turn, the princess joined in, eager to be part of such a beautiful thing. The duet was like nothing she'd ever experienced. She thought she was following the bird, but then maybe sometimes the bird was following her. Could a toy do that? Or was she imagining it? She sang notes she had never hit before, higher than she had ever dared. Song was her gift, and for the first time ever she was fully enjoying it. "Rose?" Philip's voice came from far away, a little worried sounding. She almost laughed, almost missed a note. She would win the contest. The bird would wind down. But she hoped not yet. Her throat began to hurt a little. The bird trilled an arpeggio that soared up and up. She sang a decant that climbed beyond. She closed her eyes and held a single tone for what seemed like forever. She opened them to look up at the night sky. Each of her notes, each of the bird's notes, rose and became a star. A little bit of her soul, her voice, caught and rose, and would now glitter in the heavens forever. Why hadn't she seen this before? She could sing the sky. She held one note for so long that little flecks of blood came out of her mouth. It was perfect, not disturbing. Her blood became tiny red stars, joining the notes and other stars. She was part of it all, her body and spirit, and the music and the universe. Then a single, irritatingly off and banal note ruined everything. The princess came to, forced to refocus her eyes closer to the earth. A tree branch resolved itself in black detail against the sky. Perched on it like a lump was a nightjar, an ugly, large-mouthed, brown and black bird. It chucked and whistled its ugly call into the void. Was it looking at her? Its voice was scratchy but nuanced, unlike the toy bird. It carried. Over the field, and even above the blurry din of the village dance and band. Instead of disappearing up into the sky, or falling tinkling to the ground, the male bird was calling plaintively for a friend, for a mate. The princess forgot her song. Oswald was looking at her intently. Otherwise, neither he nor Philip was moving, but the little mechanical bird kept singing and glittering and jerking back and forth in its cage. Its notes sounded silly, toy-like. Rose suddenly felt sick and pained, her throat burning. She blinked at the little wind-up bird. "That's it, then," Ozzy said, suddenly unfrozen. He spoke nervously. "You've stopped singing. You've lost the bet." Rose looked back up at the nightjar. She raised up a graceful hand. There was no reason the carnivorous and mostly shy bird should leave its perch and light on her finger. But it did. How did she know it was carnivorous? It burbled happily and did everything but move its strange whiskered beak on her hand like a cat. She stroked the back of its head. "I'll have your sword," Oswald continued.
"There was no bet," Aurora croaked, her voice ruined. "Another trap. He tricking me, singing forever."
Philip looked confused at first. His gaze moved from Oswald to his bird to the princess and her bird, and then back again. Then his face went white with rage. "I should kill you where you stand," he swore, starting to pull out his sword. Aurora Rose opened her hand, and the little brown and black bird flew away. Saved by the creature of the forest, they remembered her and found her, even in her dreams. Whatever happened, if she ended up alive and back in the real world, she would never, ever forget them, no matter what path her life took. Oswald wasn't reacting to either the princess's threats or the turn the situation had taken. His eyes were now strangely opaque like Liana's. "How did you get past the protective ward, demon?" Philip demanded.
"Oh, everyone knows old Oswald,"
the thing that obviously wasn't human said with a leer.
"Everyone helps open the gate and lets him get his wagon through. You might say my current role fits like a second skin. No one sees through it."
The princess coughed, the wounds in her throat itching and scratching. A small goblet of blood sprayed out onto the ground.
"You do have a lovely voice, princess,"
Oswald said with a nasty sneer. Philip made an inarticulate sound of rage. Before she could stop him, he drew his sword and drove the blade into Oswald's heart. The thing that looked like a person squealed like a pig. He shuddered and vibrated and shook in a way that no normal creature did when it died. Black, oily smoke poured out of its eyes and nose of the wound in its chest, but unlike the others, the skin began to collapse. Great swags of it bagged and pooled in dry puddles on the ground. The smoke dissipated with a hiss and a terrible smell. All that was left was the thin shell of the original Oswald, the human-shaped husk a demon had hollowed out and moved into, like a mummer into a costume. The princess turned and closed her eyes. "It's not real," she mouthed silently to herself. But was there a real Oswald in the real world? Was he dead now? Was there a real demon in the real world as well? Was it dead too? Where did the dream end and reality begin? "Well, at least he won't report this back to her now," Philip said shakily, wiping his sword on the grass again. The princess coughed, a little less blood this time. She really would have kept singing forever. Some day when she was awake, this would be a hard-to-keep hold of dream memory. The only thing that would remain would be a feeling that she had sung with the angels, that she was at one with the universe. And she would never do it again. She wished she could talk so she could tell Philip how she felt, how Maleficent ruined everything and hurt her in ways she never expected. But it was too painful, in every sense of the word. "Let's get out of here," Philip suggested. "Hide until morning, in case there are more of her spies around. We'll go out to the far fields, keep warm in a haystack maybe." She didn't argue, exhausted and dispirited, unable to speak. Out in the meadows, the last insects of summer were chirping comfortably and the ground smelled of dry grass and clean dirt. The princess drew out of herself a little, marvelling at all the sensations. But she was still caught in her memories of being stuck in the castle, where all was sterile and dead. Philip chose a large pile of hay and dug into it, making a little hollow for them. After she clambered in and settled down, he got in next to her, then pulled out his sword and placed it between them. She gave it and him a curious look. "They do it in fairy tales," he said. "You know, to keep from... It means I can't... It's sort of symbolic. If anyone ever asks you about tonight, you can say there was a double-bladed sword between us and your chastity was safe." She raised her eyebrows at him wearily. It was a strange thing to be concerned about right then, considering none of this was even real. "Just forget about it. Go to sleep. Rest. Whatever one does in a dream when one is tired," Philip said, taking off his cape and laying it over both of them. "I know I'm exhausted." She curled up, her back to him. It would have been warmer if the sword wasn't there. She wanted to be held, by Philip, or her fake aunts, or a real mother and father, or even Maleficent the way she imagined her to be. Tears began to fall silently from her eyes and soaked the hay under her head, faster and faster until she finally slept. And that's when she finally woke up.